The pandering that we've been doing to athletes of all ages ran Nick Saban out of college football. It's destroying young men. It's destroying sports. We're pandering to the athletes way too much. I'll explain next. Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining me. Steve Kim just around the corner, TJ Moe in studio with me. This episode is brought to you by our good friends at Good Ranchers. Fall in love with beef, chicken, and seafood all over again by subscribing at goodranchers.com. Use my promo code FEARLESS to get a free $119 Heritage ham plus $25 off any box with your subscription. We're going to start today's conversation with Nick Saban, and he had an interesting interview with ESPN that I think connects to a conversation I'm going to connect it to that Shannon Sharpe had with Steve Stoute, some rap music guy or whatever that people know. He's connected to, Jay-Z and Cameron, any of those guys. But I'll show you. I'm going to connect what Shannon Sharpe and this Steve Stoute talked about to this overall pandering that we got going on with athletes. Before I do any of that, before I get into this fire, I do want to remind you all to pound that like and subscription button on YouTube. Make sure you're getting the notifications on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple, give us that 5-star rating and write a review. But most importantly, if you're watching the show, the number one thing you can do to support this show is support Blaze TV. Go to blazetv.com/fearless, use the promo code FEARLESS, and you can save $30 on your yearly subscription. If you want to support this show, support Blaze TV. Watch this show on Blaze TV. Love you over here at YouTube. Love you over here at Apple. But if you really want to be a supporter, watch us on blazetv.com. Now, let me get into this show. I want to read you all an excerpt, a quote from Nick Saban that explains and goes into detail, I think, or gives us a hint into why he retired from college football. He said, "I thought we could have a hell of a team next year, and then maybe 70 or 80% of the players you talk to, all they want to know is two things. What assurances do I have that I'm going to play, because they're thinking about transferring, and how much are you going to pay me? Our program here was always built on how much value can we create for your future and your personal development, academic success in graduating and developing an NFL career on the field. So I'm saying to myself, maybe this doesn't work anymore, that the goals and aspirations are just different, and that it's all about how much money I can make as a college player. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's never been what we were all about, and it's not why we had success through the years." You'll hear that, some of you, and you'll agree with me and think, I get where Nick Saban's coming from. There will be others that say, man, y'all just want it the old way, and Nick Saban's an old fuddy-duddy, and Nick Saban's just mad because the kids are getting money, and Nick Saban makes millions of dollars. He can make $10 million a year, and now he's complaining because his quarterback wants to make $2 million, and the kids deserve the money, and blah, blah, blah. You can say all of that. But there are people like Nick Saban. There are people like myself who understand that what's going on in sports and going on in college sports and really going on at the high school level, we don't focus in on the high school level nearly enough. But this whole thing of everybody participating in sports and having part of their motivation be money. How much money can I make? There are high school athletes that are getting name, image, and likeness deals while still in high school. But even the ones that aren't getting those deals while in high school, they're thinking about it while in high school, can't wait to get to college and start making money and making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And you all, there's many of you, what's the matter with that? Well, There's a time and a place for everything if you're really interested in developing a young person, a complete young person. There is, again, I know I'm old. I know to some of you I'm going to sound stupid, but there is a process to developing young people where money should really not play any role. That there should be a rite of passage and some sacrifice. And yes, do I think coaches are overpaid and schools and universities and television networks and the decision makers around sports, they don't know what to do with all the money. They don't know how, can we just give coaches more money and assistant coaches more money? They don't know what to do. And so and because the NCAA handled things so poorly that name, image, and likeness came into play rather than some sort of structure that would entice the players to continue their intellectual development while also benefiting financially. The NCAA blew it. And so now we have the Wild Wild West. And now we have a situation where coaches and true disciples have lost their leverage over kids. So just imagine, I know the coaches aren't parents, but this is the system that we had in place for like 100 years, that adults would have leverage over the kids because like, hey, my kid, my 8-year-old, he's not gonna eat. He's not gonna be clothed without me providing. That gave a parent leverage because kids have a mind of their own and they're hard to control. They don't want to listen. They're like any other human being. And if you lose leverage over them, you've actually lost control of them. And you've lost the ability to impose some values that they'll need later in life that they don't recognize when they're young. And so right now, I'm just talking about 8, 9, 10-year-olds and just dealing with your kids. And just think, if your kids were making as much or more money than you, or making enough money that they could tell you, F you, I'll clothe myself, I'll feed myself, I'm gonna do what I want. So let's say your 8-year-old is making $90,000 a year. Do you think it would be a lot more difficult to instill your values and control that kid? Be much more difficult. Now, you may think, well, when a guy reaches 18 years old, he's old enough to go off and die in the Army. He doesn't need a Nick Saban or any coach or an assistant coach managing him. He doesn't need that develop. That it's untrue, for one. When most of us were 18, we were complete idiots. And that's if you can honestly evaluate yourself. If you can honestly evaluate. Now, you can lie to yourself like LeBron James. Remember, LeBron James just put out a video or did an interview where he said, I wouldn't tell myself nothing at 18. Looking back, I had it all figured out when I was 18. You can lie to yourself like that. Or you can be truthful and say, oh, if you have a rearview mirror, if you're 10 years removed from being 18 or 20 years removed or 30 or whatever, if you look back honestly, you'll say, man, these adults that I was at odds with and bucked up against, they were actually right. And so what I know about myself, let's say I had been 2 inches taller and played major college football. If someone had given me in 1985, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, I'd be dead or in jail right now. And I say that in all seriousness. If I had money and the freedom to do what I wanted to do and the freedom to tell my parents or tell my coaches, man, I got this. I'm getting paid. Because I was already impossible to control. If my father could come out of the grave, he'd be like, oh, man, I had to go to war with Jason. If my mother was on the show, Oh, God, the war I had with it. And if my coaches, Paul Shadell, Lawrence Cooley, Dave Magazoo, any of them, oh, what a nightmare Whitlock was. And he had nothing. I didn't have anything. I drove an old beat-up car, and when my parents sent me $50, I thought I had hit the lottery. We're not going to raise and develop a generation of leaders through sports. That is out the window. And I know many of you are saying, oh, it never was, it never, blah, blah, it was always exploited. You're lying, you don't know what you're talking about, you're not honest with yourself, you're clueless. Sports used to disciple men, and that process benefited most men that went through it. Are there some terrible stories? Did I deal with what I thought was some unfairness in sports? Some unfairness? Yes. Did I witness people deal with, hey, our best player, Tim Walton, great player, had a cup of coffee in the NFL with the Detroit Lions or whatever. They didn't give him the kind of accolades at Ball State that he deserved. I saw that unfairness. But Tim Walton's one of the greatest guys I know. A dad, a husband, a leader in his church. He survived that unfairness that he dealt with at Ball State and became a great human being. And I'm not saying the unfairness helped him become a great human being, but adversity does help. And Tim would sit here and tell you, there's two sides to the coin, because he was our best player and he was a great kid, but Tim had a difficult background. And the coaches had a right to be a tiny bit leery of Tim Walton. Me and Tim talk about this all the time. We joke about it all. But like, Tim carried a gun in, 1985 because he had been shot. He had every right to want to carry a gun. But there was an edge to Tim in our college days that made the coaches a bit uncomfortable, and they didn't want to go all in with him because it's like, hey, this dude's from Detroit, and he's come from a rough background, and he might shoot somebody. If you've listened to me tell stories, and sometimes I don't drop Tim's name, but he's the guy that when some guys called us the N-word and we jumped out of the car to fight, Tim was the guy that was standing there with the Uzi. And I was like, holy cow, this escalated very quickly. But anyway, I'm just saying that what sports used to do for young people has now been eliminated. And there are guys like Nick Saban saying, I really don't want a part of this. And there will be many of you saying, good riddance. I won't be one of those people, because athletes are out of control. They've been pandered to and pampered way too much, and we keep worshiping them at a higher and higher level. And I want to show you what happens. And again, if you've listened to the show, you've heard me say some positive things about Shannon Sharpe and his club Shay Shay and what he's doing. You've heard me say, obviously, some negative things. But he just did an interview with Steve Stout. Did I call him Glenn Stout previously? I can't remember. Steve Stout. And they started talking about Skip Bayless and Shannon's relationship with FS1. And it's an indication of what has happened. And Shannon's my age. But it's an indication. Shannon, far more talent than me as an athlete. I mean, far more, light years. He's a Hall of Fame football player. But it's what happens when young people, and even at 21 and 22, when you're showered with NFL riches, and when you're in college and people can see like, oh, this is a really talented guy that could end up in the NFL, you get pampered and catered to in a way that distorts your view of yourself, view of the world. Some of the values that you need are eliminated because your talent and the way the world interacts with you and the messaging you get from the world, you can do no wrong. I want to play this clip of Steve Stoute and Shannon Sharpe talking, and then I'll explain. Play the clip.
I just think that it's over time, the whole working class idea, how you work, has shifted from the indentured servant, the slave, the employee, to ownership. You got to have ownership. I mean, this is your show, and I'm proud to do this with you because everybody publicly seen what you did, that you knew your worth. You created value, and you knew your worth, and you got what you deserved because you got what you earned.
Correct.
And if you don't have an opportunity to have ownership, then no matter how good you are, you'll never feel the impact of your value.
Right.
So, like, you got to do that. And you're going to take a short-term L to do that, so what?
Right.
I don't want to be one of these people. I never wanted to be one of these people who said, man, I came up with this idea, I invented this, I did all this shit, but you never got a chance to benefit from it because you took the short-term money? Mm-hmm. That's not cool. And you see it all the time with a lot of your peers. I'm sure you want to tell them all the time, man. I don't know what you could do to help them, but a lot of these guys they are trapped by that mentality of short term. They feel like they're stealing or something. Like every time they get a check, they're getting away with something. No, you're giving away too much.
Right. Well, it comes down to, how do you see yourself? Do you see yourself as talent, or do you see yourself as a partner? Do you see yourself as an owner? For so long, we've been talent.
Taught to believe that.
Yeah. Because when you come into football, they cut you a check. You're not part of you don't own part of the team. Mm-hmm. You come into basketball, but in this media space, what we've been able to do digitally, okay, no.
Hell no. But you know what? Even outside of the digital, and I ask you something, man. I watch your ex-partner, not your partner, your ex-host, mm-hmm. Skip. I don't even understand why all these other black athletes even go on the show now. I don't even understand what they're doing. To me, it's so clear that he needs black talent, athletes, rappers. He's doing everything to prop himself up. And I know he's getting paid over there, and everybody else is getting pennies on the dollar. And I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you go over there and do that? He clearly isn't the guy. He needs you. Why don't everybody leave the show and let's watch him do it for a minute. That show would be dead immediately. They get all these guys over there, they give him pennies on the dollar, and they prop him up. I'm like, we got to stop doing that, man. We can't do that no more. It's not worth it. And there's nothing that comes out of it long term, except what they benefit from.
Well, I like where I am right now.
So that's Steve Stoute. He's some record executive, hip-hop guy, written books about hip-hop, an industry that installs idiots and makes them icons. And I'm not saying that there's no work being done, but he lives in a fantasy world where people are installed and you know, true talent. It's not a real meritocracy. He's from that world, and he's made a bunch of money because he's willing to take whatever deal or do whatever it takes to survive in that hip hop world. Hats off to him. I'm not beating him up. But with Shannon Sharpe as an athlete, and just as someone, if he were honest with himself, he would have stopped this Steve Stoute and said, hold on, man, we gotta speak some truth here. I know it's popular and it's fun to beat up Skip Bayless. And look, I do it over here as well. There's tiny kernels of truth in what he's saying about Skip Bayless. Maybe not even tiny kernels. There are kernels of truth in what he's saying about Skip Bayless. But what Shannon Sharpe has to be real enough to say. But again, Steve Stoute has framed everything up in this victimhood narrative. And, oh, my God, you were taken advantage of, and you're getting pennies on the dollar, and blah, blah, blah. And Shannon Sharpe has said it at other times when he and Skip were getting along. But he should have said there, like, hey, bro, CBS Sports kicked me to the curb because I had some issues related to domestic issues and rumors with women. I was out of the business. CBS's NFL show kicked me off, and Skip Bayless was the one person willing to partner with me, given my background, my shady background. And listen, bro, I had mouths to feed. I got baby mamas, and there's a lifestyle I'm used to having, and Skip Bayless threw me a lifeline. And over the course of 7 years, while I didn't get along with Skip all that well, and Skip should have, this is accurate, Skip should have ceded some control of Undisputed to Shannon Sharpe, because it was clear as day Shannon was valuable and that Skip was growing stale. But Skip wanted to control that show because he felt like he created it. He gave Shannon the opportunity. But if Shannon's in his right mind and not in this victim mindset, if he wasn't a spoiled and catered and pampered to athlete, he would have stopped the dude in his tracks and said, "Nah, man, I took that opportunity that Skip gave me, and I paid my dues, worked my way up to where I'm now in position to do Club Shay Shay, call my own shots, build a platform that I now own, partner with Colin Cowherd, and be in position to cash in when we sell the volume, because I'm a big part of, really, I'm the driving force of the success of the volume." So Shannon Sharpe went through a rite of passage in the broadcasting industry, paid some dues, worked his butt off, and put himself in position. There's no reason to take this dump on Skip Bayless. But athletes, because we've so put them on a pedestal, we so worship them, we so idolize them, they never have to really move into reality. Because, and when I look at the media space, and all the executives in the media world that are turning everything over to athletes, I just want you to understand who you're dealing with and what you'll be dealing with. And so whatever opportunity you gave them, they will turn around and take a massive dump on you because they don't feel like you gave them an opportunity. They feel like they did you a favor. And I figured this out when I used to run around with athletes more often than I do now, or high-profile athletes. I can remember me and a group of athletes were going to some club, and they weren't letting us in fast enough. And I was like, well, let me give somebody $100 here at the door. This will get us to, and that, what are you crazy? And he said, we're doing them a favor by eating here and socializing here. And he literally told me that we're doing them a favor by eating. That's the mentality. My presence here makes this restaurant or nightclub more popular and valuable. The heck, we're not paying anybody to get through the door. They owe us. They should put us at the front of this line, cut all these other people, because I don't mind cutting in line. But I don't want them to do it because I'm famous or noteworthy. I want them to do it because I paid them off. That's America. Now, I mean, I say that sincerely. I don't want anything that I didn't either pay for or earn. And but that's not the mentality of most athletes. Most athletes, because of the culture that Nick Saban is running from and saying, like, I can't promote any of my values now because they're all out of style and everything is about entitlement and what we're owed. And then there's no reality to the discussion because many of the athletes, even the ones that go pro, we have this myth that, oh God, they just work so hard and they put in years of sacrifice to get here. And here's the truth about particularly high school to college. The best players on the team don't always get any type of scholarship look because they're 3 inches too short, a half step too slow, arms aren't long enough, whatever. There's some kind of deal. And the guys that work the hardest on the team, they're not guaranteed. A lot of times the guy that gets the scholarship might be the laziest guy on the team, but he just happens to be 6'4". And he just happens to be able to run a 4.2 40 or 4.3 40 or whatever, or he can jump so high. It's all off potential. And so some guy that may have been lazy in high school but was so talented that he show up on Friday night or Saturday and play well, he gets a scholarship, now he gets an NIL deal, and that same guy might be lazy on the college team. He may be so, there's some college coaches that if they were allowed to really say what they think, they could tell you incredible stories about someone like Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson's coaches in college could tell you stories about, oh, what a pain in the rear end this guy was. But he ran so fast and he was so tough, there was nothing we could do. And TJ, I'm sure not everybody, because you played with some really talented guys at Mizzou.
Yeah.
And the most talented guys, sometimes they're not the hardest workers.
The least talented guys are the hardest workers if they can get on the field. That's the only way they get on the field. The most talented guys, some of them worked really hard.
Yes.
Justin Smith was a guy that worked really, really hard. By all reports, I didn't play with him. There are those guys, but by and large, your point is exactly correct.
It's talent.
It's the genetics lottery.
Yes. And that's what most people don't understand. And that's why it's like we celebrate Lawrence Taylor. He was not the hardest worker. He was not a leader. He was a great player who had a lot of freaking talent and could. I was very good friends with Derek Thomas. Derek Thomas' birthday was on January 1. And they would be in the playoffs, but he would have his birthday party no matter what day it fell on. If they were playing on a Sunday and his birthday fell on Saturday or Friday, he was having his party. And then he would go out and play hungover or whatever. And the names of players I could tell you that had coke or weed problems and felt like they couldn't play without being on coke or weed or hungover or part. It's just, and so they just have so much talent. I'm not denigrating this guy. I'm just you remember Dale Carter, the cornerback? Dale Carter, the guy had Deion-like talent. Great corner, Pro Bowler, several years. Just incredible talent. This dude had demons. Real demons. And from what I understand now, Dale's found Christ and is a different person. But, he was just supremely talented. Wasn't the hardest worker. I think Dale played at Tennessee, David Reed probably remembers. I think Dale played here at Tennessee. But it's just, and so what Nick Saban is dealing with the most talented football players in America. He didn't have a ton of leverage with him, and now NIL and what the wild, wild west of college sports has taken away even that leverage, and he's like, I can't give these guys even 5% of the values that I would like to, and so he's dealing with, man, I'm really just doing this for the money. Mm-hmm. And he's like, you know what, I got enough money. And I feel like Jay Wright, the basketball coach at Villanova, made the exact same decision. Like, what am I? And I'm not blasting any of the guys that are still in the game and still doing it. I get it. But many of these coaches, many of them, wanted to pass on some values and a worldview that could be used later in life because it benefits guys like me that don't have NFL talent. And even if I rejected it in real time, what Paul Shadell and our coaches tried to put into us at Ball State, it's benefited me later in life. And when you live long enough, you realize, like, that kid may not get it now, but the light's going to go off at some point. And so I have a lot of sympathy for all of these coaches that are coaching now. What we've done to sports is criminal. We're crippling most of the athletes. We'll hear about the high-profile athletes. We'll hear about the ones that got their money and bought cars and did this for their mama and all that other stuff. but the overwhelming majority of athletes are now being harmed, in my view, by this system. There is no long-term benefit. They get some instant money that they blow on jewelry and cars and clothes and just flossing. They don't know. No one knows what to do with money at 18, 19, 20. I didn't know what to do with money at 35. I really didn't. And I want to play one other clip. This is related to just like how we've turned the sports media over to athletes. And so there is no analysis of sports. There's just worshiping of other athletes. And the athletes get to talk about other athletes, and everything's from the athlete's perspective. And people don't realize how little the athletes actually know. This is a clip of Shaq talking about Mad Dog Russo. And actually, I like Shaq far more than I like Mad Dog, but Shaq is part of the problem here. Let's play the clip.
What people don't understand, like I throw this word out because they need to understand, G14 classification. So if you were great, like a Shaq and a Cam, we have G14 classification.
To say whatever you want.
Yes, because we've been there and we've done that on
the
high
emotions,
levels.
the
Since high school, college, and the pros, we've been there and done that. So when we say something, don't always take it personal. Don't always take it personal. Like, he knows how it is to be a pressured quarterback at the Super Bowl. He knows all that, so he's allowed to speak on that. But a lot of times when he speaks, people get sensitive. A lot of times when I speak, people get sensitive. But you need to understand G14 classification. Now, it's a lot of dudes who have no G14 classification, like Mad Dog. Like, what the do you know about quarterback? What do you know about being a bit like, so shut the up, Mad Dog. Stick to the traditional media. When it comes to sports, you don't know what the you're talking about. I do.
I like Shaq, but, what everything Shaq's saying, why wouldn't that apply to Stephen A. Smith? Stephen A. Smith didn't play in high school.
Played one game, right?
Didn't play in college. Doesn't know what he's talking about. It's clear as day, but it doesn't apply to him. Mad Dog, and Shaq's not making any kind of racial point, but he is making a point about where we've gone in the sports media, that the athletes are the experts, and they're not. They're not. There are people that actually study the game, that can't play a lick, never played a lick. Some of them are, didn't play at a real high level. But guys like Bill Belichick, Greg Popovich, there's plenty of them. There's plenty of them. But the athletic world has no respect at this point for the values that real experts and men that didn't hit the genetics lottery, they have no respect for that. And the overwhelming majority of men don't hit the genetics lottery. And then they're forced to, if they want to survive, they have to use their brains and intellect to actually succeed in this world. And we're just completely rejecting that. And so do I think Shaquille O'Neal knows more about basketball than I do? Yes, I do. But if I study long enough and if I'm prepared, can I talk about basketball in a more informative, analytical, easy to understand and digest way than Shaquille O'Neal? Every day of the week. Every single day of the week. And when you have Shaq's, I'm telling you, I like Shaq. He has a lot of self-awareness. He's got a lot of self-deprecation. But Shaq doesn't know, and this is why he would be a terrible coach, because the details never at any time have mattered to Shaquille O'Neal about playing basketball. No one had to tell him how to set a proper screen, because at his size, any screen that he set would do the job. He didn't have to learn how to shoot free throws. He didn't have to learn a lot of things. And so the details never mattered, and so he's never really concerned themselves with them. And, it's my real message is, or part of my message is just like, this worship of athletes and catering everything to athletes. It's the death of sports television. It's bad TV. These guys are uncontrollable because they've been rich for so long and catered to and pampered to for so long. They're not going to fit in any type of real corporate structure. And now, at this point, you all have created Frankensteins, and they're all going to turn on you. And they are turning on you. And they are, again, Stephen A. Smith is running, and he's not an athlete, but he's part of this entitlement culture or whatever. Pat McAfee, they're all executive producers. Pat McAfee, I don't have a boss. Jimmy Pitaro's on people I answer to. F. Norby Williamson, I'm the executive producer. It's crazy what we have done. I want to bring Steve Kim into the conversation. There's a couple other things I want to talk about with Steve Kim as well. Is there anything you wanted, before I want to take care of our guys at Preborn, anything you want to toss in here to you maybe I overlooked?
Well, I think I just want to reinforce that some of the dumbest people I've ever been around were on the teams that I played on, and were acting like they're experts for wearing a uniform. And they couldn't tell you what the guy next to them did. They didn't know their own job half the time. I remember standing next to guys, and I won't call out their name, and telling them what route to run in the middle of the game. So it's like, just because you wore a certain uniform, you do not suddenly become an expert. And your point about Shaq, it's like, well, okay, well, I don't see that many coaches on TV. Charles Barkley wasn't a coach, and Kenny wasn't a coach, and Shaq wasn't a coach. And the coaches would run circles around these guys as far as knowing the strategy of the game. And what is our point when we're talking to fans? You can give them a little insight. JJ Redick talks about this. Fans don't want to know every little bit of the game that the players should have to know. They want to be fans of the game. Tell them a little bit of strategy, and then let's talk and have some fun. That's actually why Shaq and Charles do so well. They make the game fun. That's the point. So this idea that Jason Whitlock, although you're a former player, or like Colin Cowherd, or somebody who just didn't really play sports, couldn't come in and stir up the conversation and be good for the fans, it's retarded.
What about my overall point about Nick Saban and what we've done to college sports in terms of coaches can't pass on values? It's too high risk.
Well, I agree with that. And I actually think there was a bit of self-awareness going on with Nick, and that how long's NIL been going on? 3 years? 4 years?
2 or 3 years.
Okay. Yeah. I think he understands my competitive advantage is gone. It's done. Everything that I could offer these guys about discipline and even the strategy, because he's run through so many coaches now. I think he's had 7 offensive coordinators in the last 11 years. I mean, he runs through guys like crazy because it's a great step-up job. He'd go be an OC at Alabama, win a national championship, and get a head coaching job. And so he's like, I got to convince these guys to play for me with this many national championship trophies behind me in my office. My competitive advantage is gone. I can't offer these guys what I once did. It's time to get out. I actually think most of these coaches, the Deons of the world, are going to be more prevalent. Now, they won't all be Deon. What they're going to be is chief marketing officers. They're not going to be guys that can come in and teach you discipline and teach you the fatherly advice. And I mean, it was hard to get kids to go to class before. How do you get a kid to go to class when he's getting $250,000 a year? I mean, I remember Sheldon Richardson was a guy that I played with. One of the most athletic guys that I've ever been around. He knew money was coming. He didn't even have the money yet. And we used to have 2 GAs assigned to him to wait outside of his class just so that they could make sure he didn't leave early so that he could get good enough grades to stay on the field. That's what they were doing with guys before. What do you do now with a guy who's getting $1 million today? Like, the guy might leave college with $6-7 million in the upcoming years. Why do they need to go to class? Why do they care? I mean, you're killing the kids' futures, and you're killing this coach, all the control. Your point about the parents and all that. I think Nick Saban has realized my competitive advantage is absolutely gone. It's time to get out while my reputation's still intact.
As we sit here today, the lives of babies still in the womb hang in the balance. I want to talk to you for a minute about the most important and pressing issue of our day, the lives of the unborn. They need our help. The Ministry of Preborn empowers young, expectant mothers in crisis to choose life. Preborn has rescued hundreds of thousands of babies' lives through ultrasound. When a woman considering abortion visits a preborn center, she gets to hear her baby's heartbeat and meet the precious child on ultrasound, and it's a divine encounter. The majority of time, she will choose life for her baby. I'm proud to be affiliated with an organization that's not only working to save lives, but is succeeding. Preborn has a passion to save unborn babies from abortion and see women come to Christ. Over the past 15 years, preborn centers have counseled over 450,000 women considering abortion, and over 200,000 babies have been saved. Those are amazing numbers, but let's do more. Will you help rescue babies' lives? To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/fearless. All right, Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell, next.
Regrets and our decisions, we all wanna go to heaven with freedom. It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
Hello, Fearless Army. I'm Jason Whitlock, your leader. I'm going to spend 2024 discussing growth and sacrifice. Hard times are here. Harder times are coming. What has stopped American growth and caused a regression in fundamental freedoms and values? A lack of sacrifice. Our ancestors sacrificed for our benefit. We have not sacrificed to protect the progress they died for. No sacrifice, no freedom. What impedes man's willingness to sacrifice? His ignorance, his perversion, his pride, his ingratitude, and his cowardice. His rejection of God. The Bible is a story about the power and the necessity of sacrifice. Sacrifice is the sun, rain, and fertilizer of growth. Growth is our life purpose. Grow in the knowledge, wisdom, fear, obedience, and reverence to the Most High. Growth requires sacrifice will be our theme for Roll Call 2.0 this summer, June 1, right back here in Nashville. We're excited to welcome you. Let me spend a minute explaining what GROWTH actually stands for us in the Fearless Army. The G is for game plan. In order to properly grow, it's essential we work from the strategic game plan spelled out in the Bible. The R, responsibility. As we grow as men, we understand and accept our responsibilities to God, family, and teammates. The O, ownership. We embrace ownership of our destiny. Outsiders do not determine our fate. The W, wisdom. We honor, value, and share the wisdom imparted to us by elders, coaches, and leaders. The T, trust. We must be worthy of trust. The reliability of a man's word defines him far more than popularity and material possessions. The H, humility. The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. That's straight from Proverbs 22:4. Come join us in Nashville as we talk about growth and sacrifice and how without sacrifice there will be no growth. Roll Call 2.0 right here in Nashville, Saturday, June 1st. Jen Psaki, the Red Priestess.
The night is dark and full of terrors, old man. But the fire burns them all away.
Are laughing.
What are people in Virginia thinking, caring about illegal immigration? They're not even close to the border. It doesn't affect them.
You know what? Where you from?
Well, I mean, I was born in Chicago, but then I moved to Fresno when I was like 5 years old. And then, I kind of hopped around and stuff. And then I moved here when I was like 17, I want to say.
Just because Jen Psaki is retarded and stupid doesn't mean all American voters are.
Well, maybe we should tell that to Rain Man, because he practically bankrupt a casino, and he was a retard.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Time for some Korean Cosell, an expert on college football, the authority on this show on college football. Steve, did Nick Saban leave college football because of name, image, and likeness?
I believe so. I'm not buying the fact that he was not really happy with his players' behavior after losing that playoff game to Michigan. I mean, when you're at the University of Alabama and you have those type of standards, you're going to have players that are going to be upset. You're going to have some that are not going to be happy. They're going to throw things around. They're going to cuss. They're going to yell. They're going to scream. I actually look at that as a good thing. That means you still care, and at least you still have an emotional attachment to the game and the team. Something that I think, Jason, across the board is a little bit tempered now in this age of the NIL. But in light of that, yes, when you've done something for so long and you recruit and you procure talent in a certain way, and other people will tell you that the SEC and specifically Alabama play by a different set of rules. And beyond that, if every single player now is going to put himself up for auction every year, and you're not just bringing in 20 to 25 new players, you essentially have to re-recruit 65 to 70. Jason, who wants to do that at his age?
No one. And we kind of broadened the conversation, Steve, to like the whole sports system has now been set up to pander to the athlete, starting in high school. And so I think for any of these coaches that aren't chasing a check, that is just not as fun or rewarding, because no matter how much money these guys make, most coaches get involved with coaching because they want to help kids. They never think, well, one day I'll be making millions of dollars. They mostly get involved with coaching thinking, hey, I'm going to help some kids. This will be fun. And yeah, I'll make nice money. But now with name, image, and likeness and everything being about money, you can't pass along any values. All you do is draw up X's and O's.
Jason, if you get into coaching for the right reasons and you continue to do it for the right reasons, which is to help young men along in life and to develop them as athletes, and then to overall make their lives better, to help set up their future, and you understand that most guys will not make the next level and play professionally, and most of them certainly don't play professionally into their early 30s. It is about relationships. It is about developing young men. And it must be incredibly frustrating for a lot of programs at that mid-level where you invest in a guy, you put all your resources into him, you build them up in the weight room, you help mature them, you give them good study habits, and just when you think they're about to help you on the football field, bang, a team higher up on the food chain gives them $25,000 more per year in some sort of NIL collective. That has to be disheartening. So what is the relationship worth? Nothing. I mean, there used to be a point, and I brought this up on Coach JB's show, and I don't know if anyone ever told you this during your recruiting process, but they would say, hey, when you sign with Ball State or any other university, you're not making a 4 to 5 year decision. You're making a 40 to 50 year decision. And it was true, because the relationships you would make, the degree that you would earn, and the network of alumni could help you for the rest of your lives. Now, Jason, it's basically, okay, you're making a 12-month commitment, and let's see where you are on the depth chart, and let's see what you can get out there on the open market and the NIL. That is not what it was intended for last time I checked.
And it's not. It's more of a 6 to 8 month commitment.
Yeah.
It's not 12.
It is.
Yeah, it's a semester. You're committing us for this semester, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. Steve.
Well, one thing, Steve. I actually think the Saban locker room thing was the tip-off of the NIL stuff. I think he thought, well, these kids are in here throwing helmets because they don't have a national championship to put behind their name now. They get less NIL money. I can't control them anymore. They're all transferring. They get less money, and they're leaving, and I'm stuck. I think that probably started the wheels turning.
Huh. Yeah.
Well, TJ, look, I'm not going to go out there and doubt Saban. He's the one in the locker room, not me. That may have been the last of many straws that finally broke the back. But it is clear that there is a culture change in college football. Most of it is probably negative. But when you have a school like Alabama with the resources that they put in to college football and the program that they have and the winning that comes with it, if they are having problems retaining players and you're Nick Saban, I'm not so sure anyone else has a real shot for long-term sustained success the way we knew it. I just wonder now if every dynasty now is basically a one-year thing. The years of a decade-long dominance where you build a culture within a program, I don't know if you could do that anymore.
I'm going to go further down this old man yelling on a lawn deal and just say, like, sports are so different and they're so corrupt now. And this is moving off of Nick Saban. I want to talk about this high school basketball game in New Jersey involving high school state playoff game, Camden High School and Manasquan, I think is the name of the other team. I think we have the video that Camden wins this game. They hit 2 free throws to go up 1 with about 6 seconds to go. Manasquan comes down and gets a putback bucket. Clearly, there's a half second on the clock. The ref calls the shot good, and then you see the ref arguing with another ref where the same ref that called it good after the game calls it no good, and Camden wins. I think let's play shot number 7. You can watch it here in real time. All right, so because we're fearless, we're going to deal with the elephant in the room. I feel like it has to be discussed because of the time that we live in. Camden appears to be a predominantly, if not all, black team. Manasquan appears to be a predominantly, if not all, white basketball team. 2 of the 3 referees are black. The ref that called the shot good in reverse course is black. Is this a hate crime we just saw here, or am I making too much of this?
No, look, if this was a white referee that would have made the same call against a predominantly black team in the middle of a suburban high school, this would have been a national story. This would have been where all the grifters would have gotten together and they would have made this into a major national story. I'm not so sure what can be done. Does the New Jersey High School Athletic Association, whatever they call it, I'm just wondering if they have the unilateral power to overturn what was obviously a bad call. But the question is, and I always ask this in boxing, was it corruption, dishonesty, or was it just incompetence? And again, I don't know which one is worse, but let's be very honest about it. It is hard not to think about the racial dynamic given the times that we live in.
The state of New Jersey's association I think, has gone on record. They're not reversing the call. And so it's going to stand. And again, how this connects to the conversation we've been having is I can't say this is what would have happened, but there was a time when there was a possibility of the winning team saying, nah, we don't deserve this. We're not going to take this victory. That's not even remotely a possibility, I believe, in this time. But I do believe there was a time when that was a possibility.
Would you have?
I wouldn't want this victory. No. Carmel High School was our hated rival. They were the rich kids. Carmel still is the rich kids school. I wouldn't want to beat them like this.
So in real time, though, I bet those kids couldn't tell. I don't blame the kids for celebrating at all.
No.
Yeah.
A day later, though, I'm talking about when I find out that we lost and I look and say, the guy called the shot good, and then for no reason, no good.
Mm-hmm. I have a question, though. And since we're going to unleash all the elephants in the room, you are in Camden, New Jersey, huh? Maybe the referees got together and said, "Hey, fellas, how many cops are here? 2. All right, any security? None. No good. No good.
No,
You
no.
never.
Steve, here's why I don't think that's a possibility. He'd already called the shot good. And so if you just stick with the call, there's no controversy.
Yes, still. I mean, I don't know. I remember the Immaculate Reception. The Raiders still believe to this day, when they were reviewing that Franco Harris touchdown, Alo Casal, God rest his soul, said he heard one of the officials say, "Okay, can you get us out of here clean?" Oh, really? Yeah. All right. Touchdown Steelers. You never know.
I think that's a lot to be asking out of 16-year-old kids. It's the New Jersey Athletic Association that should have overturned this.
I got it, but I'm not asking the kids. I'm the coach. We're not taking this.
Yeah.
I'm not asking the kids to do it. I'm the coach. Hey, guys, we didn't win the game.
I can see a coach doing that. I don't know that, and I'll just probably tell you, I don't think I would be clamoring to overturn that at 16. I would today. Today, I don't want the big, at 16, 17.
You'd be the coach today, not a player. You're not 16 or 17, so you're the coach.
Yeah.
What would you do? It's the coach's call, in my view.
Yeah. I could see a coach trying to work something out. You know, how you do it, because who knows how long, sometimes they play games in the playoffs pretty close back to back. How long ago was it actually? How long does it take to get rulings and stuff? I don't know. That there's a little more to this. And also, you know, how this came from a phone across the way. You know, their official film, can you see it as easy and all that? There's a lot to it. I don't know.
No. They didn't do some kind of review. The refs didn't do a review.
Yeah, I'm talking about the coach, though, would have to see it, digest it, and make a decision before the next game, before it gets to the board even, right?
Yes.
So they've made a ruling now, and then you have to go say, we don't care about the board's ruling. We forfeit the next game.
There's been plenty of stories written about this, and I don't think, almost instantly. I think Steve Politi wrote a piece, but almost instantly. And I'm just...
What you're talking about is the old commercial with the black kid.
Yeah, the ball was touched, and he said, "I touched it." The other team's ball.
Yeah.
That's fantasy land. That doesn't happen in real life.
That's what I'm saying. I'm playing that. I don't even know what I was. Coach, I touched the ball. And then at the end, he's like, "Good call, man." The coach looks at his player. The player touched the ball. It went out of bounds. "Come on, man, shut up. We're going to lose the game." He's like, "Coach, I touched it. I touched it." And I remember being a kid, I'm like, that kid's a loser. When I was 16, 17, in the heat of the game, I did whatever.
Keep reducing it to the kids. We're a bunch of adults here. I'm saying the head coach shouldn't take this victory. It's not up to the kids to do the right thing.
Morally, you're 100% correct. And I agree that that's what should be done. I think that you're talking about a 0.001% of coaches that would ever do that. And he should do that.
Okay, let's say it's 1982. You think it's still that lower percentage of coaches? I just think the world has become so racially divided and so corrupt because all the arguments are, hey, we were wronged in the past, and so who cares if we do wrong now, or we're owed that. And so I just, everybody is so cynical about everything. I'm talking about everything, not just racial stuff. They're just cynical about, was 9/11 an inside job? And so when that's the mentality and the atmosphere of your country, no one we got over here, and the refs did something cowardly or stupid. That's just the way the world is what people say.
Sports weren't as important back then. They've grown in importance partially because of money, partially because of attention and whatever. And the more important stuff gets, the more people are likely to lie about things. And I can even give you just the play that anybody remembers me for at Missouri. People swear there's a block in the back. that sprung me for a touchdown. It's the only touchdown I ever had over 5 yards, probably. A 68-yard touchdown with a minute left against San Diego State. And people will swear up and down. It was against your coach, the guy Brady Hoke. And he engaged him on the side, blocked him, you could argue, in the back, and knocked 2 or 3 guys down. And so there's nobody chasing me, so I scored a 68-yard touchdown. And I would never, at the time and even now, I'd be like, eh.
Yeah, that's a block in the back. That's a judgment call. This is the guy made the shot, TJ, with time on the clock, and look, if the ref had called it no good, and there had been 0.8 on the clock, but if he had called it no good, it's less controversial.
For sure, but we're talking about morally right or wrong now, not more controversial or not.
Well, I'm just saying, if he had called it good, and we proved that it was wrong, I would not forfeit the game. But since he called it in real time good, and now I believe he did this intentionally to benefit us, and his racial bias entered the room, that's why I don't want the victory.
That's a fair and an added variable, I think, if you actually believe that. And I tend to in this case. But I wonder if that coach believes that, or if they would ever acknowledge, because they'd say, if it went the other way, these white guys would never give us the game.
I get it. Steve, you be the arbitrator here. If you're the coach, do you want this victory or do you reject it?
You probably don't, but you can't reject it. You can't throw that fish back into the ocean, because then at this point, I'm just telling you, the reaction's going to be, oh, no, we deserve this. Why are you capitulating? They'll start using all sorts of bad terms for the coach. They'll call him a sellout. And people will start to use, as Thomas Sowell has said, the philosophy of grievance, that somehow, because we were wrong 30, 40, 50 years ago, that now this is like some sort of justice. This is some sort of equity. So I don't think the coach is even in a position, regardless of how he feels, to try to reverse or to turn down this victory.
And hopefully we'll install this video when we air the show, but I just discovered a different angle of what happened originally. When the ref calls it good, the Manasquan celebrates, and the refs start exiting the court. They're done. They get stopped by the Camden coach as they're exiting the court, and then that's when they huddle and overturn this.
Jeez.
The winning team is celebrating. Yeah, on the court.
Camden.
The refs are exiting the court, and they get stopped. And this is a crime, man.
This is where the New Jersey Athletic Association should have stepped in, because obviously at this point we now know the character of the coach. Yeah. He didn't just accept it; he asked for it.
Yes. Yeah, and so the ref tried to do the right thing, and got stopped by and then just on what basis does he overturn it?
Come on, man, you gonna let those white boys beat us? That's the basis.
Well, keep in mind, 2 black refs and 1 white. Does he say that in front of the white ref? There's just no way.
Who does he get to first?
It looks like simultaneous. It looks like it's. I see the 2 black. They're looking at everybody celebrating. They're walking, and oh my, yeah, you can see. I don't know if it's a coach but it's somebody. It seems like the white ref was almost all the way. Nope. He wasn't. One of the black coaches was all the way off the court, and there's some dude in a white shirt that grabs the first black coach, and he's waving his arms like this, and he pulls the first black ref back, and the white ref is the last one to exit the court. He stops the 2 black guys, and he's yelling and screaming, and he's going like this, and then all of a sudden they have a conversation. This is crazy, man.
Jeez.
This is what we've done to sports. I'm gonna move on. I just this is what we've done to sport. Steve, I wanted to tap into your boxing expertise. What the hell is going on with Ryan Garcia? He has been on a Twitter stream, and fill the audience in a little bit on the background on what's been going on with Ryan Garcia, and then give us some background about Ryan Garcia and what's going on here.
Well, I mean, he's got to fight April 20th, and leading into this, he's kind of, I don't know if he's doing Antonio Brown, Britney Spears, or Alex Jones. It may be a combination of all three, but you'd have to put up the tweets that he's talking about abduction and the raping of children, and that his phone was hacked, and that he has seen satanic rituals with the Illuminati, or he's talking about the Bohemian Grove and a secret society, that he knows the truth. He's jumping on the Twitter spaces with noted figures in the social media space that kind of deal with these issues. Look, I don't know what to really think. Maybe there's some truth to what he says. The problem is I find him to be so inauthentic as a person that I don't know what to believe. And I'm not saying what he's saying does not have complete merit or not. But if he is just trolling in terms of marketing this fight against Devin Haney, and this is something I brought up earlier this week, I have a question. For someone that has mental health issues and has labeled himself a mental health advocate, if he is doing this as a troll, as the kids say, is it proper for a mental health advocate to more or less, quote unquote, act crazy, for lack of a better term, and to make a mockery of this whole issue? I don't know. Look, I'm not one of these guys that really is that much of a fan of Ryan Garcia. As I said, I think there's an inauthenticity to him as a person, as a fighter. And when you live your life the way he has in such a self-created fishbowl, and your whole existence becomes almost like this reality show, this is what you turn it into. And then this is like a cautionary tale of living your whole life on social media and the dangers of the intoxication of fame. So I don't know when he's performing, and I don't know when he's authentic. That's all I can really say about Ryan Garcia. And by the way, even before all of this, I don't think he had a snowball's chance in hell of defeating Devin Haney on April 20th.
Walk us through, though, Steve. When you say inauthentic, when did you start seeing that? Years ago? His whole boxing persona's inauthentic? Put some meat on the bones there for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember when I first met him, he was a relatively nice kid making waves on social media. But, you know, when he signed with Golden Boy and I was working for them for Ring TV, he was a nice guy. Him and his parents, they seemed harmless. And within a year, they're complaining about the commentary of my partners, Beto Duran and Doug Fisher, because they were too critical in their view. And that was just the beginning of it. And they're always a hassle. I know people that have done business deals with them and other companies. Every deal seems to be breached. He calls himself a Christian while he has multiple kids out of wedlock. And then last week at the press conference, he seemed like he was off. Certain people think he might be on drugs or the influence of some substances, which is fine. But he makes a big show out of saying, yes, I do weed. Yes, I drink. But so do all of you out there. And I say, you're right. But none of us are proselytizing like we're Jimmy Swaggart. See, that's the problem. He just does so many things for clout on social media that I don't know what he really believes in. I really don't. And for him, the Patrick Bet-David interview that he did a month ago, I thought was bizarre. I thought this was really the beginning of it. And when he says stuff like, well, I took the Tank Davis fight against, even against my own interest, because they put a weight clause and a rehydration limit in, because I wanted to save boxing, because I had to do it to get No, you didn't. That's a bunch of malarkey. You did it for the money, just like anybody else. And he's such a diva. He really is. And he's always complaining. And I was thinking about this over the weekend as I'm kind of like doing a deep dive into Mike McCallum, one of the great underrated fighters of the 80s, probably the best pure junior middleweight. And I thought to myself, you know, we used to have men like Mike McCallum, the body snatcher, and now we have perennial malcontents like him. And it really got me to thinking yesterday. I'm flipping through the TV. There's a Showtime, one of their networks, had When We Were Kings, that great documentary that came out about 25 years ago about the rumble in the jungle between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. And I really thought to myself, wow, boxing writers had it good back then. They can go cover events like this and men like Marvin Hagler. And now we're reduced to following the Twitter timeline of King Rai, how the mighty have fallen. Wow, what a gig.
One other boxing question, Steve. Jake Paul and Mike Tyson are going to fight, I believe, on July 20th on Netflix. Your thoughts? 57-year-old
Jake
Mike
Paul,
Tyson.
Mike Tyson, and chill. Yep. The fall of this once great sport continues. You know, you give them an inch, they'll take a yard. But this is what boxing has been reduced to in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying that this is the end of boxing. As my great friend Larry Merchant said years ago about this sport and business, ain't nothing gonna save it, ain't nothing gonna kill it. It'll always exist in some sort of form. And there have been novelty fights in the past. Lyle Alzado fought Muhammad Ali back in 1977 at the Mile High Stadium. Okay? So this is nothing new. We've seen stuff like this. But I think it's kind of sad that an iconic fighter like Mike Tyson, who, Jason, he's older than us. He's 57 years old. I remember him at the very tail end of his career when he was slumped over on the ropes against Danny Williams, a guy that in his prime would not be good enough to be a sparring partner. And look, Mike has reinvented himself. I think he's doing okay financially. But why do this? Because Mike is actually a historian of the sport. From the very beginnings, when he was taking the Catskills by Custom Auto, this young man, Michael Gerard Tyson out of Brownsville, Brooklyn, for hours would watch these black and white films of old fighters like Ad Walgast. And if you ever talk boxing with them, he is a true historian. And for him to do this, I'm a little bit disappointed. But again, this is about the money. And Jason, I don't know if I'm going to watch this or not. I probably will since I have to. But I came to this realization about 2-3 years ago. I was talking at dinner at Phil Trainey's group of boxing guys, including Doug Fisher, my old partner, who's now the editor at Ring Magazine. And Jason, I told Doug, I said, Doug, we got to come to grips with this. We've already seen the best of boxing that we're ever going to see. I got to see Roy Jones in his prime. I got to see James Toney. I got to see Mark Too Sharp Johnson. I got to see De La Hoya, Winky Wright, Marco Antonio Barrera, Manny Pacquiao, Marquez Barrera. I said, now we get Ryan Garcia and Jake Paul. And I said, you know what? It's okay because we're still going to cover it. But more and more, I find myself kind of like being, remember that old cartoon that they did on Fox, The Critic? Remember that with John Lovitz? He was that one little guy that hated every movie, that everything that came out today is absolute crap and nothing is Gone with the Wind. I am now little Jay. Whatever his name, I think his name was Jay, but I am now the critic. And I embrace it because when I watch old fights that I grew up kind of viewing as a casual fan, the quality of fights and also the quality of men, Jason, is such a steep decline. I don't even know what I'm watching anymore. I just know it's not as good as what it once was.
Man, you left off a lot of big names that we got to see.
Yeah.
Sugar Ray and Marv Hagler. That was when I was in college.
Well, I grew up with them. You're right. Jason, you have to understand from my viewpoint, I am now not the Korean Cosell. I just might be the Korean curmudgeon, and I'm proud of it because you're right. Growing up in the 80s the way we did, think about this. We got to see the Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, Duran, Four Kings. We got to see Larry Holmes, one of the most underrated, really good heavyweights of all time, transitioning into the apex of Mike Tyson. And then into the 90s, when I got into this business, I did not appreciate Oscar De La Hoya enough. I was one of his critics, but I was there for many of his big fights. And again, I got to see guys like Julio Cesar Chavez, another really great fighter. Also, growing up in the 80s, Jason, I'm sure you must have watched it. The 84 Olympic team has a special place in my heart. Pernell Whitaker, Meldrick Taylor, Virgil Hill, Evander Holyfield, Mark Breland. Now we get a bunch of guys that are propped up by social media. They don't fight all that often. And this is my thing with Ryan Garcia. It's an indictment on the sport that we have to treat him like with kid gloves because he brings in an audience that really does not care about boxing except the 1 or 2 fights that he fights a year. Honestly, there's not even the casual fans that he brings in. He brings in a lot of other people. But the inability of boxing to create organic stars that actually have put in a lot of work and have a certain quality is an indictment on the sport. And I've said this to my friends and people in the industry. After Canelo Alvarez, who, by the way, is close to about 65 fights, I don't know who the next crossover big-name star is that when he fights, it's an event. Because everybody else, Jason, by their 20th fight is fighting once or twice a year. And I keep trying to tell people, hey, guys, this is a niche sport now. This is not 1975 when boxing was still a major sport. Can you really create a star when your youngest, best fighters are fighting once every 8-9 months? I think the thing is broken, Jason, and I don't know how you fix it, and I don't think people care enough to even try.
Thank you, Steve. Great job. We'll see you next week. We'll play some tomorrow, and tomorrow, Kathy Barnett will join us for a special Saturday show.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, no deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I just want